him the benedictions which he had earned by his austerities. And then he asked for all those benedictions that he wouldn't be killed in land, water, sky, by any man or beast or person created by Brahma, or by any weapon, or by hands, or day, night, inside, outside, all these things. And so now we're going to see what he does after he gets all these benedictions. So text, let's go around. We're going to read 1 to 20, and we'll focus on 19. So go ahead and start there, Dustin.
Narada Muni continued, Lord Brahma was very much satisfied by Hiranyakashipu's austerities, which were difficult to perform. Therefore, when solicited for benedictions, he indeed granted them, although they were rarely to be achieved. Lord Brahma said, O Hiranyakashipu, these benedictions for which you have asked are difficult to obtain for most men. Nonetheless, O my son, I shall grant you to them, although they are generally not available.
Yeah, just everyone can read 2, because there's a lot.
Text 3. Then Lord Brahma, who awards infallible benedictions, departed, being worshipped by the best of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, and being praised by great sages and saintly persons. The demon Hiranyakashipu, having thus been blessed, the demon Hiranyakashipu, having thus been blessed by Lord Brahma, and having acquired a lustrous golden body, continued to remember the death of his brother, and therefore be envious of Lord Vishnu.
So you can see how, just pause a second. You can see how the people who are not devotees may do some austerities, but to please the Lord, and then those austerities, things that we do in devotional service, purify the heart. So we get free from, lust, anger, greed, envy, and these things. But we see that Hiranyakashipu, even after doing austerities to please Lord Brahma for, 1,100 celestial years, he still, that envy and vengeance still remained in his heart. He didn't get purified, although he did so many austerities. So that's, we get purified by worshipping Krishna. We don't necessarily get purified by worshipping demigods. We stay with all of our bad qualities.
Text 5 to 7. Hiranyakashipu became the conqueror of the entire universe. Indeed, that great demon conquered all the planets in the 3 worlds, upper, middle, and lower, including the planets of the human beings, the Gandharvas, the Garuras, the great serpents, the Siddhas, Charanas, and Vidyadharas, the great saints, Yamaraj, the Manus, the Yakshas, the Rakshasas, the Pishachas, and their masters, and the masters of the ghost and bhutas. He defeated the rulers of all the other planets where there are living entities and brought them under his control. Conquering the abodes of all, he seized their power and influence. Hiranyakashipu, who possessed all opulence, began residing in heaven with its famous Nandan garden, which is enjoyed by the demigods. In fact, he resided in the most opulent palace of Indra, the king of heaven. The palace had been directly constructed by the demigod architect Vishwakarma and was as beautifully made as if the goddess of fortune of the entire universe resided there.
Yeah, so Hiranyakashipu got this amazing power, and he took over the whole universe. He defeated every single ruler of every planet, and the king of heaven, Indra, he threw out of his kingdom, and he sat down on his throne and took over the kingdom of heaven, and that was his base, and from there he ruled the whole universe.
Texts 9 to 12. The steps of King Indra's residence were made of coral. The floor was bedecked with invaluable emeralds. The walls were of crystal and the columns of Vaidurya stone. The wonderful canopies were beautifully decorated. The seats were bedecked with rubies, and the silk bedding, as white as foam, was decorated with pearls. The ladies of the palace, who were blessed with beautiful teeth and the most wonderfully beautiful faces, walked here and there in the palace, their ankle bells tinkling melodiously, and saw their own beautiful reflections in the gems. The demigods, however, being very much oppressed, had to bow down and offer obeisances at the feet of Hiranyakashipu, who chastised the demigods very severely and for no reason. Thus Hiranyakashipu lived in the palace and severely ruled everyone.
So hold on a sec. Yeah, so he not only did he take over, but he engaged all the demigods as his servants. And they all had to get up in the morning and go pay obeisances to him and do menial services and things for him. And they were, very oppressed. And then he would just yell at them for no reason. So they would come and, bring him some offering as his servants, massage his feet or whatever. And then he would just be abusive towards them. He would just insult them, offend them, and, kick them or something for no reason at all. And so everyone was just always in fear of him. Wasn't a happy situation. Okay, please read.
O my dear king, Hiranyakashipu was always drunk on strong spilling wines and liquors, and therefore his coppery eyes were always rolling. Nonetheless, because he had powerfully executed great austerities in mystic yoga, although he was abominable, all but the three principal demigods, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu, personally worshipped him to please him by bringing him various presentations with their own hands.
Yeah, so only Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu were spared from having to be the menial servants of Hiranyakashipu. All the other demigods, it says they were not just serving him, bringing him things like, a plate of sweets or a little fruit platter or something. They were bringing him things with their own hands, but they were worshiping him and trying to please him.
O Maharaj Yudhisthira, descendant of Pandu, by dint of his personal power, Hiranyakashipu, being situated on the throne of King Indra, controlled the inhabitants of all the other planets. The two Gandharvas, Vishvavasu and Tumbaru, I myself, and the Vidyadharas, Apsaras, and sages, all offered prayers to him again and again just to glorify him.
So this is interesting because this is Narada Muni speaking. And even Narada Muni is saying, I myself also offered prayers to him and was serving him. So that might be very, Narada Muni is such a great personality. He's the spiritual master of, so many great personalities like Vyasadeva and, Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj and the four Kumaras. So how is it that Narada is engaged in the service of Hiranyakashipu, such a great devotee? And so it's explained by the Acharyas that because Narada knows the plan of the Lord, and so because he's, sometimes we say Bhagavan Narada, that he knows past, present, and future. So he knows that this is all part of Krishna's plan. He knows that Hiranyakashipu was, Jai from Jai and Vijay and the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. He knows that they were cursed. He knows that this is all Krishna's plan because Lord Vishnu wanted to fight, and he also knows that it's his plan to glorify Prahlad Maharaj, and for Prahlad Maharaj to be the king, and for this demon to be killed so he can quickly get back to Vaikuntha, and so that the Lord can have his enjoyment of fighting. So Narada, he knows what's going on. And he's see, this is all part of the Lord's wonderful plan. And so he's actually happy to be a part of the Lord's pleasured pastimes. Because after all, Nrsingadev is he's one of the Leela avatars. So this is all Leela. It's not like, this is all, Leela means it's all happening for the Lord's pleasure, right? There are other avatars that appear to perform certain functions within the universe, like the Purusha avatars and the Guna avatars and things, but the Leela avatars, they come just for fun. They just come for their own enjoyment. So there has to be some drama, for enjoyment. If it's all just peaceful and everything's just happening routinely, then it's not so fun. It gets exciting when there's some drama. And so Narada Muni is happy to be a part of this, and also he's thinking that the more we can facilitate Hiranyakashipu being horrible, the quicker Lord Nrsingadev is going to come. So he wanted to also accelerate the Lord's appearance. There's another example of Narada Muni accelerating the Lord's appearance. Does anyone know what that is? Yeah, he actually goes to Kamsa and says, you know, you're being pretty lenient. You're trusting this Vasudeva a lot. You know, Krishna could be born at the person who's going to kill you could be any one of these sons. You know, he said the 8th, but it could be the 5th. It could be the 6th. You know, Lord Vishnu is very tricky. And so then he induces Kamsa to go and get all the babies, throw Vasudeva and Devaki in the prison. And yeah, so everybody's like, what, Narada, you just like made it so bad for the devotees. What are you doing? And yeah, so but he knows that this will make Krishna come quicker, right? Krishna comes when things get so bad. Even in the pastime of when the demigods go to the ocean of milk and they appeal to the Lord to please come, then in this particular pastime, Lord Vishnu says, I'll be coming. Says, but not immediately, but when my devotee is tortured to the extreme, at that moment, then I'm going to appear to save him. So he doesn't come like preventatively. He doesn't prevent, you know, the abuse of he comes afterwards. Anyways, just interesting. This is the Lord's pastimes. So, all right, let's go ahead.
Being worshipped by sacrifices offered with great gifts by those who strictly follow the principles of Varna and Ashrama, Hiranyakashipu, instead of offering shares of the oblations to the demigods, accepted them himself.
Yeah, so usually, you know, people would perform sacrifices and do things, and then the shares of the sacrifice would be offered out to all the demigods. But Hiranyakashipu is like, why should they get anything? Just give it all to me. You can see his greed and his selfishness here. Yeah. Please?
As if in fear of Hiranyakashipu, the planet Earth, which consists of 7 islands, delivered food grains without being plowed. Thus, it resembled cows like the Surabhi of the spiritual world or the Kama Dhuga of heaven. The earth yielded sufficient food grains, the cows supplied abundant milk, and outer space was beautifully decorated with wonderful phenomena.
You can just read another one. You can do.
By the flowing of their waves, the various oceans of the universe, along with their tributaries, the rivers, which are compared to their wives, supplied various kinds of gems and jewels for Hiranyakashipu's use. These oceans were the oceans of salt, water, sugarcane juice, wine, clarified butter, milk, yogurt, and sweet water.
The valleys between the mountains became fields of pleasure for Hiranyakashipu, by whose influence all the trees and plants produced fruits and flowers profusely in all seasons. The qualities of pouring water, drying, and burning, which are all qualities of the 3 departmental heads of the universe, namely Indra, Vayu, and Agni, were all directed by Hiranyakashipu alone, without assistance from the demigods.
Just pause there a sec. So I thought this was interesting because we heard in Canto 4 about King Vena, this very terrible, demoniac, sinful king of the world. And during the reign of King Vena, the earth actually withheld production. And then it's described there that when, you know, the inhabitants of the planet, especially when the leaders are very sinful, then Mother Earth, because she's a devotee, she's not happy. She becomes overburdened by the weight of these demons, and she doesn't want to produce. She doesn't want to supply food and things to maintain a demoniac civilization, so she just holds back. But here with Hiranyakashipu, and he's very terrible, right? This chapter is he's terrorizing the universe, but we see that the earth is producing abundantly. Everything is just glorious. The earths, the skies, the rivers, everything is heavenly. You know, cows are supplying abundant milk. Outer space is decorated. What they speak of producing nicely, like through agriculture, it says that the earth was delivering food grains without even being plowed. Like the farmers didn't even have to work. Just the crops were just growing on their own, producing so much food. And So what's going on here? Why is Mother Earth being so generous to Hiranyakashipu and the world? And then, any ideas?
She's in fear.
Yeah, that's what it says, that it's out of fear. So, yeah, there's different ways to get someone to do something, right? One is by love. They'll just do it spontaneously because they want to please. They are spontaneously offering from the heart. But then another way is by fear, that the person is worried that they're going to be harmed or, pushed away or, something.
Also Hiranyaksha had attacked her. Hiranyaksha had attacked her, so that being the brother of Hiranyakashipu, she was doubly in fear.
Yeah. So she had already experienced from his brother, like being thrown out of orbit, being plunged down in the Garbhodak ocean. She's like, all right, that's not going to happen again. I'm just going to just kind of toe the line here and keep this person satisfied so that these things don't happen. Yeah, and it's explained that King Vena didn't have as much power as Hiranyakashipu, so the earth wasn't so afraid of him. And she knew that, you see that Vena, he was killed by the mantras chanted by the sages, by the Brahmins, headed by Bhrigu Muni. So Venu wasn't more powerful than the Brahmins. He wasn't more powerful than, like Bhrigu Muni. He was just burnt to ashes by their mantras. But it's described here that Hiranyakashipu, even the sages were afraid of him. And we see even Narada Muni, all the Munis, Bhrigu Muni, Narada Muni, all the famous Munis, they were all subservient to him. So that's a difference here. Yeah. Okay.
Text 19.
Oh, there's another thing in 18 that's interesting, is that, that after kicking the demigods out of their positions, then Hiranyakashipu, he was in control of everything. Like Indra would ordinarily be controlling the rain and all that. Hiranyakashipu was controlling the rain. He was controlling the wind. He was controlling the movements of the sun. He was controlling everything. He had so much power. It was inconceivable. Okay, text 19.
In spite of achieving the power to control in all directions, and in spite of enjoying all types of dear sense gratification as much as possible, Hiranyakashipu was dissatisfied because instead of controlling his senses, he remained their servant.
Yeah, this is the verse that we're going to come back to, but there's one more verse, text 20.
Hiranyakashipu thus passed a long time, being very much proud of his opulences, and transgressing the laws and regulations mentioned in the authoritative Shastras. He was therefore subjected to a curse by the 4 Kumaras, who were great Brahmanas.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's go to the Sanskrit for text 19. Saitam nirjita kakub ekarad vishayan priyan yato pajosham bunjano natripyad ajitendriyaha saitam nirjita kakub ekarad vishayan priyan yato pajosham bunjano natripyada jitendriyaha. Please chat. Saitam nirjita kakub ekarad vishayan priyam yato pajosham bunjano natripyad ajitendriyaha. Okay, let's do the word for word all together. Saha hi Hiranyakashipu itam thus Nirjita conquered Kakub all directions within the universe. Ekarat one emperor of the whole universe. Vishayan material sense objects. Priyan very pleasing. Yata upajosham as much as possible. Bunjana enjoying. Na did not. Atripyat was satisfied. Ajita indriya being unable to control the senses. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In spite of achieving the power to control all directions and in spite of enjoying all types of dear sense gratification as much as possible, Hiranyakashipu was dissatisfied because instead of controlling his senses, he remained their servant. Purport. Someone like to read the purport? Go ahead, Mother Kunti.
Purport. This is an example of a circ life. Atheists can advance materially and create an extremely comfortable situation for the senses, but because they are controlled by the senses, they cannot be satisfied. This is the effect of modern civilization. Materialists are very much advanced and enjoying money and women, yet dissatisfaction prevails within human society because human society cannot be happy and peaceful without Krishna consciousness. As far as material sense gratification is concerned, materialists may go on increasing their enjoyment as far as they can imagine, but because people in such a material condition are servants of their senses, they cannot be satisfied. Hiranyakashipu was a vivid example of this dissatisfied state of humanity. Let me say that again. Hiranyakashipu was a vivid example of this dissatisfied state of humanity.
Thank you. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, yeah, we're seeing here in the preceding verses, we are seeing how Hiranyakashipu basically had it all. You know, he had all the power, he had all the wealth, he was controlling everything, even the natural, the elements, the fire, the rains, the sun, the wind, all the living entities within the universe were under his control, even the demigods, the sages, the Brahmins, everyone was under his control, except three, Vishnu, Shiva, and Lord Brahma. But yeah, he basically had it all, and he was still not satisfied. So this is the nature, right? Krishna talks about the nature of lust or material desire, is that dushparena analena cha, that it's never satisfied and it burns like fire. So fire, no matter how much wood you put on it, it's never going to be satisfied. It's just going to burn more and more. So that's the nature of lust. The more we get, the more we want, and we're never satisfied. So yeah, Prabhupada says that Hiranyakashipu was a vivid example of this dissatisfied state of humanity. And it's basically this dissatisfaction that's driving the whole economy in the world. That people are buying things, they're told that if you just get this thing, you just buy this thing, then you'll be happy, then you'll be satisfied. This is going to solve all your problems of life. And so they work hard, they earn money, they buy their thing, they're happy for a few days, but then dissatisfaction again. They're dissatisfied with the thing itself. It doesn't work the way they hoped it would. They're dissatisfied with how they feel about it. They're not getting the pleasure that they wanted. They're dissatisfied by other people's reaction to it. Instead of people, they're thinking everyone's going to love me. Everyone's going to want to be my friend because I have this cool, phone or this fancy car or this, fashion clothes or whatever, it is that you thought was going to make you popular and in the eyes of everybody. So dissatisfaction sets in all these different ways. And then people think, oh, well, that didn't work. Let me try another thing. And then they just buy something else and something else. And so we have this culture of consumerism where, People are just raking in on, they're just earning a living, basically, and getting rich on other people's dissatisfaction. And the world is going on like that. So, and Hiranyakashipu, no one could have more than Hiranyakashipu had. And although he was controlling everyone else, he was controlling all the demigods, everything in the universe, but he was not able to control his senses. That's what it says here, that natripyat ajitendriya. And that's why he was not satisfied, because his senses were totally out of control. And the senses are never satisfied. There's one nice prayer by one of the acharyas. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita. It's quoted in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where this person is lamenting, like they've kind of like come to Krishna consciousness, and they're saying that, for so many years I've been serving my senses, and these senses are not they haven't been a good master. Like we're all servants, but if you're a servant and you have a good master, then you're happy, like the master treats you well, they respect you, they provide what you need, they take care of you, like that. It's okay. But if you have a bad master, then that master is always just demanding, work harder, work more, do this. It's just very demanding. And they're never satisfied with your work. Whatever you do to try to please them, they're never pleased. They're never happy. They're just always angry and grumpy and looking at you with displeasure and frustration. And So that's the kind of master that our senses are. They're that bad master that's always demanding more and more. And no matter how much no matter how many sense objects we provide for them, they're never satisfied. They're never pleased with us. And they're always just looking at us like, is that all? Is that all? What about this? What about that? You didn't get this for me. You didn't get that for me. And so it's terrible, yeah. Mother Kunti just got the look. They're like bad kids. They're like demanding kids. They're like kids who are out of control, right? Jaishnav is very controlled. His senses are controlled. He doesn't ask his mother for anything he doesn't need. All right, so these senses are bad masters. They just treat us very badly. They're like horrible. So we have to stop being servants of the senses, and we have to become the servants of Guru and Krishna, because Krishna is a very good master. He's the best master. He's always satisfied. He's always grateful. That's one of his 64 qualities, that even a little bit of satisfaction, a little bit of service brings him so much satisfaction. We see that, simply by chanting the holy names, Krishna is so pleased. And he's just, any little thing, any little offering, like, Sudam Brahman. He brought a bag of chipped rice, just some low quality rice. It wasn't even cooked. It was just this dusty old rice in a cloth sack. And Krishna ate that, and he was so satisfied, perfectly satisfied. Or, when he went, when the Pandavas were having trouble with Durvasa Muni coming to visit them, and with all of his 10,000 disciples, and they're like, oh no, what are we going to do? We don't have anything to eat, to feed them. And Krishna said, maybe you must have something left in that pot, and then he looks, she's like, no, it's totally gone. And then he looks and he sees some little bit of some little bit of shock, some leafy thing that got stuck to the side. He just scrapes that off with his fingernail, pops it in his mouth. Totally satisfied just by that. Why? Because it was cooked with love by his devotees. He's so satisfied, and then because he's satisfied, then because watering the root of the tree satisfies all the leaves and branches, so then Durvasa Muni and all of his 10,000 disciples are also totally satisfied, and they were thinking, oh no, now what? We just asked them to provide lunch for us, and we can't eat a single morsel. We're so full. And so they just walked on there. We can't even go there because we're going to insult them by not eating what they cooked for us. So, yeah, Krishna is satisfied. He just says, just patram pushpam palam toyam. Just offer me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water. That's it. That's all I need to be happy. He's so easily satisfied. So if we just focus on serving Krishna and the devotees of Krishna, then everything will be nice. They'll be satisfied. We'll be satisfied. But if we go on trying to serve our senses and satisfy our senses, it's just not going to work. We can become Hiranyakashipu. We can be the king of the whole universe and have everything under our control and own everything and wield all this power and still not be satisfied because we can't control our senses. So, yeah, who are some other examples of people from scriptures or from just the history of human civilization who had a lot of power and control and, opportunities for sense gratification, but they were not satisfied. They were still servants of their senses. King Midas, what was the story? Tell us in the mic.
King Midas was very, very much eager to acquire wealth. He met a mystic who gave him the power that whatever he touched would turn to gold. And therefore he touched everything. And then he by huge mistake, touched his wife.
Oops.
And she turned into a solid lump of gold. And he became most dissatisfied with his benediction. And that's just one thing. He also lost other relationships because of that.
Yeah, so he wasn't he just touched, like a block of wood and had a solid, like a log of gold, and then okay, I don't need this anymore, I'm good, and more and more and more and more. And then it just becomes a cause of trouble for the person we see. And what are some other examples? Scripture or from history? People who had a lot of power, but they weren't in control of their senses. So many examples. Jaishnav, you must know one.
Jaishnav, come on. Prahlad? No.
Prahlad Maharaj, he wasn't in control of his senses. He's an example of somebody who was in control of his senses. We want somebody who had a lot of... That's the example we have. Another example.
There's an example.
Ravana.
There you go, Ravana.
Tell us about Ravana. Tell us about Ravana. What power did he have? What was his power? Okay.
He's not feeling
So Ravana was the king of Lanka, right? And speaking of gold, he had a city, a whole city made of gold. And still he wasn't satisfied because his senses were out of control, right? He heard of Mother Sita and the beauty of Mother Sita. And even though he had his wife, he had his good, chaste, beautiful wife, and not only his whole wife, but there were many women there that he had basically, captured as his like slaves for his, demoniac pleasures. And he wasn't satisfied with any of them. He wanted another. He heard there's another woman who's very beautiful. I must have her too. And so he went and kidnapped Mother Sita, and then that ended up being the cause of his death and destruction.
Another example is in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it was Haridas Thakur who had the touchstone. Who had the touch? And he heard...
Or Sanatana Goswami.
Oh, Sanatana Goswami. Thank you very much. And that story is famous because the guy that got the person that got the touchstone, after he got everything he wanted, he realized, wait a minute, if this is, this is not so valuable, there must be something more.
Yeah.
And so he went back to Sanatana Goswami, and he said, throw it away.
Yeah.
I'll give you the most valuable treasure. It was the holy name.
Yeah, so he was intelligent. He didn't just keep going after sense gratifications. Yeah, because he had the association of Sanatana Goswami, then his spiritual intelligence kicked in. Yeah. I was thinking also we had one U.S. president, the recent past, who, he was the president of the most, top country in the world, top position basically on the planet. And, he kind of like couldn't control his senses, and he had an affair with his secretary, and he got impeached, and he lost everything. He lost his position. And so it just goes to show that you can have the highest position, you can have so much wealth, so much power, so much respect, so much sense gratification, and it's just not enough. If you're not in control of your senses, then you're really not in control of anything. It's just an illusion that you think you're in control of anything, you know, because whereas somebody like Prahlad, you know, who is in control of his senses, then everything is at his fingertips, you know. He doesn't need to have material power. He doesn't need to have material wealth, although he did later, he became the king later. But it never became a cause of his degradation because he was able to use it. So, yeah, so these material wealth and power often don't do us favors, right? I'm just going back to text 2 now, where Lord Brahma is saying, "O Hiranyakashipu, these benedictions for which you have asked are difficult to attain for most men. Nonetheless, O my son, I shall grant you them, although they are generally not available." And the purport Prabhupada says, material benedictions are not always exactly worth of being called benedictions. If one possesses more and more, a benediction itself may become a curse, for just as achieving material opulence in this world requires great strength and endeavor, but maintaining it also requires great endeavor. So, yeah, if we think like material wealth and opulence, it's difficult to get. You have to work very hard to get it. It's difficult to maintain, because once you get it, then you have to work so hard just to protect it, to maintain it. You have to have like a whole security system in your house because you've got valuable things in there. You have to worry about your money, putting it in the bank and make sure everything is like, you know, all your online accounts are like, you know, two-step verification and all these things, you know, like all these different security procedures and stuff so that nobody can hack your account. And so it's difficult to get, it's difficult to maintain and protect, and it's also difficult to maintain your consciousness when you have it, right? It's so much easier to become degraded when you have wealth. And we see like the sons of Kuvera, Manigriva and Nala Kuvara, that they were the sons of Kuvera, the demigod of wealth. So they had so much wealth, and they just ended up becoming, you know, debauchees. They just ended up becoming so degraded, just, you know, enjoying with naked women in the river and splashing and sporting, and they ended up getting cursed. And yeah, there's so many examples of this, that wealth just causes like degradation. I remember when I lived in London for like 5 years, and if you live in England, you're always hearing about the royal family. And we would just hear about, you know, how there were these 2 sons in the royal family, and they were growing up and they were becoming teenagers. And especially one of them was just getting so degraded, you know, he's just going to these wild parties and taking drugs, and he was still a minor, you know, and it was kind of like a national disgrace in one sense, but you kind of felt sorry for the kid because it was hard not to. When you had all the opportunity, you had all the wealth and all the whole lifestyle, the lifestyle that the family lived was so decadent, you know. It's just so easy for your mind to go that way. Oh, I can have anything I want. I can have any kind of enjoyment, so let me just go for it. Because they don't have any training. They never went through brahmacharya ashram, you know, they don't know. They didn't get training for how to control the senses. And that's why this, you know, Vedic culture is so valuable, because it gives training from the very beginning of life, right? Like Prahlad Maharaj will be teaching his friends from the very beginning of life. Practice Krishna consciousness. Learn how to control your senses. Live a regulated life. You know, eat only food that's offered to Krishna. Control your mind by chanting the Mahamantra, by studying the scriptures. And then if we can control our senses, then that's actually the highest position. And we were just reading a verse from Bhagavad Gita yesterday in our evening Bhagavad Gita class at Krishna House. And it's really nice. So this is chapter 6, text 8, where Krishna says, Jnana vijnana triptatma kutasto vijitendriya. So we can, it resonates with this text 19 that we're studying here today, because text 19 uses a couple of the same Sanskrit words. So in the last line, na tripyad. So tripta or tripya means satisfied. So he's saying that Hiranyakashipu was na tripyad. He was not satisfied because ajitendriya, because his senses were not conquered. But the alternative here is in Bhagavad Gita. This is the chapter on dhyana yoga. Krishna says that jnana vijnana. So one who has knowledge and who's also realized this knowledge of Krishna consciousness becomes triptatma. Is that same word, right? Tripta. Becomes satisfied. Triptatma means self-satisfied. He becomes self-satisfied. And then the senses he becomes a conqueror of the senses. He's able to conquer the senses. So just like here it said, ajitendriyaha, the Hiranyakashipu's senses he was ajitendriya, his unconquered senses. But here this person comes vijitendriya. They get victory over the senses. And then by that vijitendriya, by conquering the senses, one attains the most exalted position, the highest position, which is above any material position, which is the transcendental position. And the word, Krishna uses a metaphor actually in this verse. He says, kutasto. So kuta means mountain peak. Right, we were just hearing about Gajendra, and we weren't. I was teaching about Gajendra, and he goes to Trikut mountain, which has the 3 peaks. So, there's like a mountain called Himakut, means a snow peak mountain. So this word kuta means a mountain peak. And it says that this person who has knowledge and realized transcendental knowledge and who's controlled the senses by dint of that knowledge is situated on the peak of the mountain. They're standing there on the mountain peak. They've attained the highest status, the highest situation within this material world, even higher than Hiranyakashipu, because he had material power, but it was all within the 3 modes of material nature. He was just interacting with the material energy, whereas a person who has knowledge of Krishna consciousness, their position is higher. It's higher than the king of the universe because it's the transcendental position. It's not just a high material position. And so we were talking about, this metaphor of kuta, of the mountain peak. So if you're standing on a mountain peak, there are all these connotations to being on a mountain. If you've ever climbed a mountain, you're standing on the top of the mountain, then one thing is you have a great view. Right? You can see 360 degrees all the way around, and you can see for miles and miles. So from this, when we control our senses, when we have knowledge and realization, then we get perspective. We get a broad perspective on life, and we get clarity of vision, right? We can see clear, and we can see far into the future. We can understand the consequences. We can think about, things like not just this life, but the next life, and we start thinking of our long-term interest, right? We think in terms of Shreya, or the ultimate good for ourselves and for everyone, rather than just the Preya, or the immediate interest. But people are controlled by their senses, then they just get totally, they just get this tunnel vision. They get obsessed with the object of the senses, and they just pursue that object of senses, and they don't even think about the consequences. Like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita also, that they contemplate the object of the senses, they develop attachment, and then desire, and then anger, and then they become deluded, they lose their memory, their intelligence is destroyed, and they just, right? So when we become too focused on the object of the senses, it's just this crazy downward spiral where our vision becomes like this. Our perspective becomes so enclosed, it's just me and this sense object, me and this sense object, and I need to get this sense. And we forget about our values, we lose our intelligence, Whereas when we control the senses, it's totally the opposite. Our vision expands. We're on the mountain. We can see everything very clearly, and we can understand that, okay, this sense object is there, and I may want it. It's not that devotees don't have material desires, but they see it in perspective. Okay, I want this thing, and maybe it would be nice to have, maybe it would be helpful in some ways, but I can also see how it could not be good for my spiritual life, and I can see that it might have these consequences in the future that are not very good. And so, you know what? I'm just going to keep my eye on the goal here, and I'm just going to let that go. I'm just going to move. I'm going to move on without it. I think I'll be fine without it. I'll probably be happier without it. I'll definitely be spiritually stronger without it. Or find a way that I can use it in Krishna's service. Let me just dovetail. I have this desire. It's really hard for me. I'm not ready to let go of it. So let me just find a way that I can use it in Krishna's service, and then at least it will be not so degrading, right? It'll less likely that it's going to drag me down, and more likely that it's just I'll be gradually purified by the connection with Krishna. So, yeah. And then by acting like this, then we can become satisfied. We're always just thinking in these terms. So that's what there's a very famous verse from Bhagavatam that says, Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adokshaje ahaitukiya pratiyata yayatma suprasidati. That the supreme dharma for all living beings is that by which one attains transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he says that when such devotional service is performed without material motivations and without interruption, then it completely satisfies the self. So this is the way for satisfaction. This is so getting material power, getting material wealth and opulence and in this world, that's not the way to get satisfaction. The only way to become completely satisfied is by serving Krishna, doing devotional service to the Lord without any material motivation and without interruption. Just doing it all the time. Just like, I'm a devotee, I serve Krishna. That's who I am, and that's what I do, and that's my life. That's everything becomes just funneled into our devotional service and pleasing Krishna. And then we'll be happy. Then we'll be happy with anything because the senses are controlled. Senses are automatically controlled by being employed in the service of the Lord. So these are a few lessons that we learn from this section. We don't want to become like Hiranyakashipu and get frustrated, get dragged here and there by our senses, and ultimately get destroyed. We want to serve the Lord, by the mercy of the Lord, be able to control our senses, spiritualize our senses, be satisfied, live a happy life, serving Krishna, and go back home, back to Godhead. So I'll open up for any questions or comments.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for a very well thought out and focused class and helping us, that 10th offense to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions. So we just feel like, I just get a little bit closer, whittling away. Thank you.
Yeah.
And any comment on that?
We just need to be reminded all the time. All the time. No matter how many times we've heard that, material things don't make us happy. We're not these bodies. We're not these senses. We shouldn't let the senses control us. Just serve Krishna. Spirit souls. No matter how many times we hear it, it's like we still need to keep hearing it because we're in this material world and we're just totally surrounded by, sense
Eat
objects.
this, buy this, do this.
What's that? Yeah.
Eat this, buy this, do this, go after this.
Yeah.
You'll be happy. You'll be happy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I promise you'll be happy.
Yeah.
And you're not.
And sometimes we get convinced. Yeah. We get fooled.
Or maybe you are for like a few moments, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Today is the 15th anniversary of the arrival of Shri Chota Radhakala Chanji back
that's why they have that
to
effulgence.
Dallas. And that's why they have that beautiful effulgence behind them. And so we can meditate on their beautiful return to Dallas.
Jai. Thank you for coming back, Chota Radhakala Chanji.
Hi, thank
I'm
you.
sure the devotees were in a lot of separation during that period. It must have been
This was
heart-wrenching.
Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Goswami Maharaj's ardent desire that they come back. And they came back,
Jai.
of course, posthumously, but
Uh-huh.
they came back.
Thank you for sharing that. Mother Lalita Sindhu.
Thank you for nice class, Mataji. You always put things into perspective, brings our focus back to Krishna and what we are supposed to do. So my question is on what Kunti Mataji was telling. In the 10 offenses, the last one, I feel like that's the most difficult one for me because every time, 10 offenses are, if you avoid these offenses, then only you can chant nicely.
Mm-hmm.
But like even after hearing so many instructions, still maintaining material attachment. Sometimes material attachment can be very subtle, like we may be able to overcome power, money, name, fame, all these things. But there's subtle things like the ego, like for example, when anger triggers in me, I know I have an attachment to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems very difficult to overcome. And then it's like a vicious cycle, right? How when I chant, I'm able to get rid of material attachments. But if I don't get rid of material attachments, I cannot chant. So how to reconcile with this? Because subtle attachments, it seems like I don't even perceive it until I feel it. Like, for example, anger. Then it triggers me, okay, I'm attached to this thing, that's why anger. But other obvious gross material attachment seems like somehow we can overcome, but this subtle one seems very difficult.
Yeah.
And then, but holy name guarantees that we become free of material attachment. But without having material attachment, you cannot chant. So what does it mean? How do you reconcile this?
Yeah. Seems like a little bit of a catch-22, right? So, yeah. And the subtle ones are very difficult, right? It's not that usually when we're chanting japa, we're not thinking, oh, how can I get money and buy that nice car or something like that. You know, we're not usually thinking like that way, but we might be milling over something that somebody said that, you know, hurt us in some way. And we can't let go of that, you know. Why? Because of the ego, you know, that's like, I was dishonored. Something that we say, those things can keep hurting us. So, yeah, I can see how those are also material attachments. We have to pray to Krishna, you know, we just have to pray to Krishna. And the thing is that, see, even that verse that I was quoting, Savai Pumsam, the idea is that we become satisfied when we don't have material motivations. So, if we're chanting our rounds and we have these material attachments, but we're kind of lamenting them, you know, like just the way you presented the question was like, why, you know, I want to get rid of this material attachment. I really just want to focus on the holy name, but this thing keeps coming up and distracting me. So the key word there in the 10 offenses is to maintain material attachments. So to maintain something is not just having it. It's like if you have a house, you have a house, but then maintaining the house is another thing, right? It means you need to take care of it. You need to, like, you know, pay your bills and keep it clean and, you know, fix things that break. And to have a car is one thing, to maintain it is another. You need to check the oil and, you know, wash it and wax it and change rotate the tires and stuff sometimes, that kind of stuff. So we may have material attachments, but maintaining them is another. Maintaining them means you're feeding them. You know, you're indulging in them, or you're living your life in such a way as to keep them. You want to keep them, right? To maintain it is I want to keep it, and I want to keep it in good shape. I want to keep these material attachments strong and healthy. So if that's not the case, if we have material attachments, but we're not actively or even subtly maintaining them, we actually are praying to Krishna, please, Krishna, I have this material attachment, bothers me all the time, it distracts me during japa, it affects my relationships, please let me be free from this, you know, desire for, you know, to be someone special, to be honored, and, you know, these subtle things. And so then that's not an offense, that's not namaparad, because we actually want to get rid of it. We have a sincere desire. It's natural that having been in the material world for so many lifetimes, we're going to have material attachments. But if we want to get rid of them, if we're actively trying, we're engaging in the processes of bhakti with a sincere desire and praying to the Lord to be able to have the spiritual strength to let go of our material attachments and just have total faith that Krishna, everything is your mercy, then it's not an offense. Then we'll get the benefit of chanting. We'll get the full benefit of chanting, and we'll gradually get purified from. Krishna will give us the strength to let go.
For gross material things, like you gave an example, like we have a house, we work hard to maintain it, so that is an offense. But for subtle attachments, can you give an example, like, so I can recognize myself if I'm feeding those subtle attachments or not? Like, is it under maintaining?
Yeah, like if I have an attachment to being honored, then I'm going to always be trying to put myself in positions of where there's honor, where there's automatic honor. You know, I'll be wanting to be seen. You know, maybe I want to do a service where I'm like, you know, offering the arti on a Sunday or something, like offering the Gora arti, you know, where there's like 100 people in the temple room and, you know, everyone's going to see me there, you know, doing anything. Or I'm going to, just in conversation with devotees, I'll be kind of like boasting about my achievements. You know, oh yeah, I did this, you know, I did this nice service, or I did this, I made this big sacrifice, or, you know, we'll be kind of like boasting to try to get people to think that we're great, you know, to show it like, impress people, we'll do things to impress, to make a show. We'll speak in such a way as to try to, self-aggrandize ourselves, like that. Those are ways of maintaining that attachment to honor, attachment to, ego, false ego, basically. Or, like, false ego means identification with the body. So if we're just putting a lot of attention into our, appearance, like just really going, just being really obsessed with trying to attract attention, trying to make ourselves beautiful because we want to be noticed and be the center of attention and like that, then that's feeding that kind of thing. Or, sometimes like I said, when we even getting material things, there's a gross and a subtle aspect to that. Like, okay, I need a car to get to work, but I want to get a fancy car so that people see my car and they're like, whoa, nice car, Like it's about ego too. It's indulging my attachment to prestige, right? Because material objects are not just useful objects, but they're also sometimes status symbols. So if I'm attached to things that give me prestige or status, then that's a subtle aspect of that. I don't know. Does that some of those help? Do you want to give some examples that you can think of?
Actually, I was looking for answer from. For me, I think the most difficult one is like you mentioned, like. We have realized that other than Krishna, not to be too arrogant, but in general sense in scriptures, our main goal is to please Krishna. Mm-hmm. But if like somebody says something like you mentioned, like somebody say something which is not so pleasing to us, I think we shouldn't be so bothered because our end goal is to please Krishna. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, like you told, like those things, even if we know it doesn't mean anything because we cannot please everyone and the end goal is to please Guru and Krishna. But sometimes when somebody says something because they are not pleased with us, we know we shouldn't be affected by it because that's not our end goal. But like you told, like when we are chanting, still it comes to our mind, although we want to ignore it. So I was along those same lines. I think I got the answer what you mentioned.
Yeah. If somebody says something that somebody treats us in a way that we don't like, or they say something, then we tend to become defensive, right? We'll make excuses, we'll try to explain ourselves, or that I didn't do it, or or we'll not like the person. So those are all ways also of maintaining those subtle material attachments. But we see here, like, the attitude of Narada Muni, that he gets, basically made the servant of Hiranyakashipu. And he's just like, all right, he's just going with it, and he's probably just like, we hear about how Hiranyakashipu is mistreating the demigods. I'm sure he's also like insulting and mistreating Narada Muni. He's like, all right, this is all part of the Lord's plan. I'm just going to go with it. This is actually good because it's accelerating the Lord's mercy upon the world, Prahlad, and all of us. So we can see it that way too. If somebody's maybe insulting us, mistreating us, scapegoating us, like blaming us for all of their problems when we actually didn't do anything. Just be like, somehow this is all part of Krishna's plan for me, and it's going, either I have to learn something, or I'm I'm becoming humble, or something. It's always beneficial. Everything that Krishna does is, Krishna's controlling everything, and he's our friend. So that means that everything that happens must be for our benefit. So then just Narada Muni, he's just going with it. It's like, all right, I'll just, I'll worship Hiranyakashipu, I'll bow down to his feet, I'll bring him, a nice offering of food, and whatever it takes to please this guy. It's cool, because this is Krishna's plan, and this is the situation that Krishna's put me in, and I know it's all going to end well, because it's because Krishna's in control. Yeah, one devotee said that in Krishna consciousness, there's always a happy ending. So if you're not happy now, if the situation now is not happy, it means it hasn't ended yet. Just be patient. You're in the middle. You're still in the middle of it, right? But it's going to have a happy ending. So just have faith and patience, and just keep going. Just tolerate. Tams to take shashva bharata. You just have to tolerate the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, honor, dishonor, heat and cold, victory and defeat. They just come and go. The Bhagavad Gita says it like 100 times. It's like all over the Bhagavad Gita. Just be peaceful. Krishna's got it under control. It's all good. Everything, we just keep serving Krishna. And then we can consider this is my karma, tatenu kampam sushikshamano. And that attitude, by that attitude, we inherit the spiritual world. We become entitled. We earn our place in this eternal service of Krishna in the spiritual world. So we see the example. We see two examples here. One is Hiranyakashipu, all the power, all the control, still not satisfied. And then we see the example of Narada Muni, totally oppressed, engaged in the service of a demon, totally satisfied and happy. It's inconceivable. Who would imagine that a pure devotee like Narada Muni would end up like in that situation? But there it is, and he's not bothered by it. So, yeah, it's very instructive for us. Okay, so we're a little over time. We'll wrap it up. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.
Bhaya Namah